And we're back. Welcome to the Weekly Roundup, the place where we unpack what's been going on in the yoga and wellness world and what we've been coaching our clients through. I'm Shannon. I'm here with the lovely Artha Coaching crew, Coach Bridget and Coach Terry. And before we started the roundup, we were talking about trust in leadership. Terry, you want to start us off?
Sure. Trust in leadership, that is an excellent topic. As you can see, those of you who maybe watch it, I know a lot of people listen, you can see I'm not in my familiar environment. I am actually, Coach Carol and I are on at an on-site in Virginia. I almost said Virginia, California, but like there could be a Virginia, California, but we're in Virginia at an on-site. Longtime Artha community member, has two locations, has just after 10 plus years moved one of their locations, and they actually bought the building and built out the space. So obviously lots of added expense and things like that. So we are here doing what we call our yoga sales boot camp, where we come in and just sort of like look with fresh eyes about what's happening in the business and helping them mostly nail down their sales process. Because even though the studio has been in business quite a while, they really are just starting to hire front desk. And so we have that classic where a lot of the teachers are doing the front desk and getting pushback and resistance from the teachers. Not they want, I like to check my class. And even to the point that when they have a front desk person on their shift, they push the front desk person aside because they want to be in control of the experience, and straight up not doing the best experience for the new people, right? And then this whole trust and leadership comes into is fortunately the majority of the team is getting on board because the owner has such trust from the team. So I've been at studios before where the pushback is really bad. It's not so much here, but that kind of led to, well, why do people push back? And then Coach Bridget said, well, it's because it's the issue of trust. And so it's you got to have the trust of your team so that if you bring someone in from the outside, there's not going to be pushback.
Yeah, I it came up because I when Coach Terry was sharing about some of the stuff that was going on, I asked about the leadership in the studio, and it sounds like she's great and her staff loves her and all that stuff. So this isn't necessarily an issue going on with this studio owner, but that's always whenever there's a lot of pushback to new stuff coming in and resistance from the team and just like sort of edginess with our team when we go in or any changes that come up, even if it's just owner implemented in the studio. I mean, if you've been listening to the roundup for the last year or so, I talk about this all the time, that this happened with my team big time, before I worked on my leadership skills at all. And I and so it came up and I asked about leadership, and I said, now this is not, I could not have said this a few years ago, but now if I brought someone in to my studio, like if I brought Coach Carol and Coach Terry into my studio and I was like, they're going to do a sales training for us and we're all going to get on board and we're going to do what they say, etc. I just, and probably eat my words someday, but I truly don't think I would have pushback from my team. I think they'd be excited, they'd be invested, they'd be interested to learn more. And so when I first started talking about it, just before we jumped on the call, it was coming out like a little bit like my team's, I was self-conscious that it kind of sounded like it's because my team is afraid of me and they know they can't push back and like, all this stuff, but that really isn't it. It's that my team really, really trusts me. And
Yeah.
like I said, this has not been the case forever, for certainly not for the 9 years I've been a studio owner, but my team trusts me. And so if I say Carol and Terry are coming in and they're going to teach you something awesome and it's so good for our studio, they trust that that's true and they trust that it's okay to let go and like be in the experience. And I have tons more practical tips, but I'll jump to Shannon because she's got her hand up, and I'd love to.
Yeah, I just wanted to just throw something out there because I've had actually two on-sites at my studio, and sort of the comparison between the first and the second is like night and day, literally. Um, for my first on-site, well, let's just say,
It was a shit show. It was a bit of a
let's just
shit show.
say a problem was identified immediately
Yeah.
and turned out to be a larger problem in the future. Should have listened to that. But seeing that resistance from, a couple of staff members who are no longer even working at my studio anymore, it's really, really interesting how an outside perspective can see the things that you don't see. And you talked a little bit about that with the basket, and I'm sure you'll get into that again, Terry. But, with the second one, the one that we just had this year, it was
It
like
was,
everybody just, they showed up and they were participating, and they, like you said, Bridget, they trust me. They trust my
yeah.
leadership. They know that I'm trying to guide the business in a way that's successful for everybody.
Yeah.
And not just for me as a studio owner, but for them as employees, as people, for us as a group. So yeah, I just wanted to like throw out my personal experience with it because it's very valuable.
Shannon was actually one of the first uh, she was our beta yoga sales boot camp because we sort of put this program together, Josh and I did. And we're like, well, let's go see. So it was a bit of a trial for us too, and certainly through the years we refined it. And I will say yes, the difference was uh, very stark in terms of the participation of the team and the level of commitment and involvement to the point that I was super impressed that when we decided to do this, we didn't really look at the calendar and realize that we scheduled the sales training on Super Bowl Sunday this year. And, as you know, in
Facts.
certain, Super Bowl Sunday, it doesn't matter who the teams are. It's just like a big day. And the fact that I think everybody showed up. Some people did have to leave early, which we knew, which was fine. They're like, I can come for this, but I'm hosting the party or I'm going to a party and I got to get ready, right? But so I think that is a big testament to the fact that it was Super Bowl Sunday, and everybody on the team showed up for at least part of the initial training. So that was really effective. Um, so I think, where am I going with the leadership thing? So yeah, so with the pushback, yeah, the basket, I have to talk about the basket because you mentioned it. So at the one location, we walk in and and it's the older location. It's one that's been, the new location, the new building, it just moved, but it's a brand new location. I mean, they just moved in like less than 2 months ago. So everything's still really pristine and, all that stuff. The other location's been around a while. I mean, it still looks great. I was really impressed. I do a white glove class. If you ever have me come into your studio, I do the classic, I rub my finger, yeah, along surfaces that most people like. I do it on baseboards and I do it like on the door jambs, and they had these beautiful pictures from, I'm pretty sure from like one of their retreats, right? They had someone on a zip line, they had someone beautiful, and they were hanging on the front desk when they were framed. And I took my finger and rubbed across the frame, thinking, and I went, somebody had recently dusted it. So I was impressed with that. But in on the counter, there was just all kinds of crap on the counter. And I shouldn't say crap. I mean, things they think like notices about this, about that, about this, about that. But it was like four things in a row lined up. There was this, and there was a basket of hand towels. Now, I say the basket was very lovely. The hand towels, because it's a hot studio. So the first thing we do, and Shannon knows, can attest to this, is at her studio, we actually moved furniture. We actually did. We moved furniture and we took everything off the counter. Everything off the counter. with the exception of at one end, they had a plant and they had a little sign, because it was probably it's an easily 8 foot long counter. So it's a very long counter. So we had a little few little few things at one end. The iPad was for the iPad check-in was all the way by the drink cooler stuck in a corner
Hmm.
instead of so we went in and then there was a basket of towels and the basket of towels was right. It was like the first thing you see when you get it, walk up to the thing. So get rid of the basket of towels. Look up, no, the basket's back. We move it, we look up, the basket's back. Right. It's so interesting how people get tied to certain things. And what is the difference between having a basket of towels below the counter that you pick, that or where it is versus not having the basket on the counter right in plain sight. It's a symbol of how people are not quite understanding that it's not, we want the experience to be not ease for the staff, but ease for the client. And not that we want to make it difficult for the staff, but if by moving the basket of towels around here, it makes it nicer when you walk in. That's where oftentimes people don't have that connection.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to say really quickly that just after I was on my high horse about my great leadership skills, I was reminded of the pen basket. I've told this story, I think, on the roundup before, but there was this ugly as like pen someone had brought in, and I feel bad, and I don't even remember who it was, and I feel confident they're not listening to this, so I don't feel bad, but let's just say it was not my style. It was like shabby chic, and that just for me isn't, it's not my thing. So there was someone had brought this basket of pens. It was in like a metal bucket, and then the pens had like these huge fake turquoise roses coming out of them. And someone had, I think it was like one of my staff members had had it at home and like brought it in or whatever. And I came in and it was like sitting on the front desk, and I was like, "Oh my God." So I just take it and I put it below the desk. It was probably 7 times I came in and had to remove, and it was totally my fault because I didn't communicate it or whatever. But like, oh my God, I could not keep that pen basket was driving me insane. People just do whatever they want, They just do whatever they want. And I just didn't communicate it. But anyway, just wanted to share that. Shannon, you had your hand up before I jumped in.
Yeah, I was just thinking that when the team was on site at my studio earlier this year, they moved something around and it caused a big kerfuffle. And change is just really hard. Like people just really don't like it. And um, but I think it speaks to the trust in leadership that like we don't waffle from the fact that like this change is happening and this is what we're doing. And not because, we're some sort of hard line ruler, but because like we're the ones who have the vision, who are guiding this ship and have the reasoning behind why we're moving the pen tin. Like we have a reason. Trust that the reason is, in everybody's best benefit. And I've had a little bit of pushback just summer wise, like switching up my schedule and just hearing the feedback from the members. And it's like, we're doing the best we can. We got people on vacation. We allow our people to go on vacation and take care of themselves and live their lives. And they deserve breaks just like you do. And practice non-attachment. It's part of your yoga practice. And sorry to skip into a whole other thing, but I just reminded me of sort of this challenge that I'm going through right now with my leadership is more with my clients and having them, trust in me as well. So,
I was gonna say, Shannon, the when you said that about your clients, and I was like, it's the same exact thing. Like it is the same process, and like how you get that with your clients too. It's by doing the same things. And so I think actually this might help you, Shannon, but I with your client stuff, but I was wondering if maybe like we could, I love practical tips, Terry. Let's do some like what do you do, Shannon? What was different in your leadership from that first on site to the second one? Like, I think a lot of people get so paralyzed when it comes to like, okay, great. So I have to be a better leader and my team has to trust me more. Like, do I have to become a whole new person? The answer is kind of, but
Kind of.
but there are some practical things you can do to become that better leader. Shannon, tell us like what was that process like?
I mean, it really comes down to um, wanting wanting to guide the team without worrying about what they're thinking. And I don't mean that in a way like, I don't care what you think, just do what I say, which I mean, hashtag Terry's dad. But anyway. But it really comes down to your confidence level and your belief. And if you believe strongly enough in something that you have a strong and very clear vision for where you're going, people can't fault you for that. And I think it just comes back to like you're working on yourself. Again, business ownership, such a opportunity for personal growth. A lot of times in the beginning, I was just really worried about what people thought.
Yeah.
I was worried about people not liking me. I was worried about, basically it was my ego, is my worry about myself instead of being concerned with like there's 44 people that work here, and if we're not successful, 44 people suddenly don't have a place to practice yoga or have jobs. You know what I mean? It's a big responsibility.
Yeah, that's great, Shannon, because that's 100%. It's like if the studio doesn't survive, it's not just the staff that's out of a job or purpose, it's the community. And you guys know I love Simon Sinek, and I saw a clip he had the other day, and he said, no parent ever has said, they all say the same thing. Oh, I just can't, I really want to have kids, right? I'm looking forward to having kids. No parent ever says, oh, I'm looking forward to raising them. I'm looking forward to being responsible for them till they're 18, right?
Mm.
Right. You're all enamored with the idea of having children, but then the reality, and I never had kids, but I certainly know people like I'm sure Shannon can attest, like, holy shit, how would we have this tiny human that we have to take care of, 24/7. We like to say till 18, but truly, it could be for life, depending.
My
Um,
19-year-old's sleeping right now. She's
yeah, you're right. Yeah. And then he said the same thing could apply to leadership. He said, you open a business, you're passionate about something, you open a business, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I have to lead. What does that look like? Right. And I think what you said, Bridget, and Shannon too, and I certainly had to go through this, is, and in the type of business we're in, and I think this partly might be something that's going on right here, is that when you're in that leadership position, your staff, and we've talked about this ad nauseum on the roundup, but your staff are not your friends, right? It's just that there is that line to you said, it's like you're the one with the vision, you're the one making the tough decisions, you're the one that has to have clarity of purpose of what's going on. And having said that, yes, there are the cases where your best friend is part of the business, but that typically is rare. And so I think that's part of it too in leadership. And I know, again, I went through this, is getting clarity on if you do have people in the business that you were friends with before you bought or own the business, that having those communications with those people and just say, look, when we're here, this is this. I appreciate you. You support me. However, I need this from you, or I have to do this because of this. And that I think can be really, really challenging, not just in a class-based service, but in any business, I think, any service-based business, it's tough when you have to do that. Shannon, did you want to chime in there with something?
Yeah, I just I just have so many thoughts in my head about so many different people and navigating, the sort of relationship part of being a leader and wanting, like I said, being that sort of like people pleasing. I've had to recover from that people pleasing aspect. And it's not that I love my staff. My staff is incredible. Like I'm so grateful for everything that they do, but also we're not friends. And we're friendly. I like you. I love you. I'm grateful for you. But also, there's that we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the boundaries. You just have to uphold the boundary. And it's not easy.
No, it's not easy. But that I would say for me, if I'm thinking back to pre working on my leadership skills and now that is one of the biggest differences is I had a bunch of friends on my staff before and now I have literally zero. Like literally zero. I think I said this a couple weeks at some point recently, but like my lead teacher probably is my management is maybe closest to, but that's really only because we speak regularly and I do run retreats and stuff with my manager or my lead teacher so we've gotten a little bit closer but we still like you know I'm not gonna big life stuff she's not gonna be my first call like we're not I don't I'm not gonna get weekly drinks and dinner with her or whatever. That is a huge difference between then and now and one of the things I see my clients going through is a lot of them when they come to us have a lot of friends on staff. And I also think this is the kind of client that I attract too, is just like the law of attraction. I just get these clients who need to work on their leadership and codependency and people pleasing skills. And um, that is a big thing a couple of my clients are going through right now is like, oh shit, I'm trying to implement these changes. And the biggest pushback I'm getting is from the last people on my staff that I want to say something to because they're my good friend. I go golfing with them. We came up in that other studio together and it is so hard. But I will just give my reminder that on the other side of doing really hard things, you always get rewarded in my experience. I was going to say just a couple other practical things that has helped me grow it helps my staff trust me. Is like, are you showing up regularly for your staff? Like, if you've got a Slack channel or a WhatsApp, like, are you regularly in there being like, whether it's Carol's Monday Minutes? I've got a couple clients doing Carol's Monday Minutes, right? Monday Minute right now. If I notice something, and now my manager does a lot more of this because I am fully remote, but I still pop in there at least once a month and say, great job on this. I noticed this in my KPIs, or like, I got this incredible feedback from a longtime member about this new teacher. And like, just are you showing up to show them that you care and you notice them and they matter to you? Because I think that sometimes studio owners, the ones, you know, they're super burnt out, they're running around, and they just mostly have resentment for their staff, and or there's a lot of that there. And sometimes you find that like they're barely interacting with their staff, except maybe on the frantic times that they're like running into the studio because they're like in between stuff or whatever. So are you showing up in some way? And then the other thing is just I think Shannon mentioned this or Terry mentioned this, but are you already like, so say you do Coach Carol and Coach Terry come in to do an on-site, like is this the first time that you've ever tried to implement change and shown them what can happen on the other side of it? Like Shannon said, change is so scary for so many people. We are just not change lovers. And we if you, it is it's so much like I'm also not a parent, Terry, but what I see my friends doing in their parenting, which is like you have to show them, like, even if they don't like it, you have to show them that staying the course on something actually can yield great results. And that, like, if you're doing that in little and big ways along the way, that is going to engender that trust with your staff. Josh, welcome. Go ahead.
Hey guys,
Hi.
came in at such a good time, just right into the fire. I love it. The two things, Bridget, that you were, saying that came up for me, and then going back for a moment ago is it's kind of the irony of owning a wellness business, but especially a wellness business or service business that's based around personal growth or consciousness or like whatever, that it itself is the testing ground for the owner. And a component of that is, and this ties to the friendship piece, that like so much, especially if you're a first time business owner, I think this is amplified massively and you don't necessarily see it coming or you don't think that it's going to happen to you. And then it absolutely does. Your whole identity is wrapped up in your business. And the weird thing on the backside that we see is someone saying, like, I have a profitable business. I think maybe I might want to sell it, but I'm not sure. But now I even have a good offer on the table. But what would I do? And you're like, for someone like me, that's a hilarious statement. No shade, because I'm like, I have 800,000 ideas before the sentence is finished. Like that's never a problem. But that alludes to this identity piece. So then by extension, if your whole business is your identity other than your family, then you think that that's also your friend network as well. And otherwise, it can be like weirdly lonely. And that's the isolation at the top piece. The maturity progression piece that any successful owner I see, anyways, tends to go through is you realize, oh, wait, like I'm actually not my business. It's a vehicle that I use. That's the Artha growth part of it. And the people in the business, it's not that they can't be my friends by some universal law, but like they're not my friends. That isn't actually the relationship. If they are purely my friend, it's either a very unique scenario where you can balance those two things, and it does happen on occasion, or you're probably going to have to pick. And that's far more common, where it's like to the point that we've seen it where someone fires a manager, the manager quits copacetically. They're like, we're actually friends. Like I can't work under you. Like that dynamic doesn't work for us, sort of thing. Um, so I don't know. I would just make the debate to like if you're finding yourself tied up in the friendship zone, so like a different kind of friend zone scenario here with your staff, I would look at like how attached you are to this being like I am this business. I am the yoga studio owner. I am the physical therapist, and that being the whole thing. So the people outside of it are the others when it's like that, as opposed to there's some other random person has nothing to do with my business. Maybe I'm friends with them because we have other common things. As a bit of a tangent, but just I did a podcast a couple of years back for a men's group, and it was talking about friendship for grown men because it's something that is not talked about generally for all people, but especially in male culture, it's like a weird conversation, and guys are usually terrible at making friends, kind of. I mean, it can be very isolating. Long story short, we were defining like what even is a friend? A friend is the person that like you just be yourself with, or at least a really good friend, or at least to some extent. Like you're like showing and allowing intimacy with a part of yourself that you otherwise wouldn't. If someone's your staff, that's why they can't be your friend. It disempowers them, you, the business, makes awkward scenarios. Like if you're like actually going to open up and be yourself in some way. And so there's like a limitation to the relationship. So semantics aside, call it friend, acquaintance, whatever. It's like that does exist if you own a business and they work for you, period. And it muddies the waters. It's not a healthy place in my opinion. I've just never seen it work out very well.
I think when when you're talking about this, it reminds me of so many scenarios in the 15 years that I've been running a yoga studio. And back to the original, sort of your original thing of like, we're in this industry that's supposed to be helping people. And of course, we want to help people. And of course, we want, to have these relationships that are symbiotic and, you know, uh, but there is this place where you have to kind of separate yourself from it and not be, like you can't be friends with your staff. And it's sad. Like sometimes it kind of breaks your heart a little bit that I really like this person and I really liked being your friend, but I can't share with you the things that I'm going through as an owner because I can't share that with my staff members. It's like that's why coaching is so important because you've got to have somewhere to go. You've got
Yep.
to have somebody to talk to about the stuff that isn't your staff. They're not your therapist. They're not your coach. And so, I just remember from other scenarios, you throw up, not down. Like you're not giving the bad information down. You're shooting it up and finding out what the
Mm.
answer is from the people that have gone before you. So, yeah, I really appreciate that.
I
You know,
love
I
that
like that
you
throw
throw
up,
up, not
not
throw
down is
down.
so true. It's so true.
it's
Well, I
really
Hey,
have,
Shannon,
gross. Sorry.
yeah. I also did this real world situation for me personally in terms of my leadership development was very early on in my studio ownership is I did have a really good friend that we were, she was first a student at the studio, then we talked about going to training and I was the person that she reached out to and week 4 when she was melting down at Bikram yoga teacher training and encouraging and then she came back and now we were peers and we'd hang out and all this stuff and then there was some issues early on and I straight up will say I handled them very poorly. I just didn't have the skills yet to do that. And she, at the time, it really hurt. And I've shared this story before, is I realized I was going to have to fire her. I was going to have to let her go. And she quit. And we had a conversation about it. It was really hard to hear because she's one of these people, she's a person that really just says it like it is and calls things out and it can sometimes be off-putting. That can be off-putting to people, but she just straight up told me some things. Now, granted, it was heightened emotion. So some of it was I had to separate a little bit wheat from the chaff, but there was some real kernels of nugget in there that really were like hard to hear. And one of the things she said is she said, I'd rather quit and lose you as a boss than lose you as a friend. And it took about a year for us to sort of work through that. And we did. And then eventually down the road, she came back. She's just a great teacher. So she would sub for me. She would always sub for me in a pinch. And that was great. Right. But it just was like, and I really respect her. And I've told her this a number of times, highly respect her for doing that because she had the clarity to realize that I could not be her boss. And she'd rather have me as her friend than her boss. So sometimes you do have to have those hard realities. And I think it goes back to what you said, Bridget, about if you are in that situation before it becomes a big deal, like it did with me, is just if they really are your friends, sit down and have that conversation about the boundaries and just say, look, this is the situation. This is the boundary in work and this is the boundary outside of work. And I'm no longer going to be talking to you about all these things because I want it to be very clear. I need you in my personal life, blah, blah, blah. And are you okay with that? And it might be that they choose to, like, you know what, but having that conversation before it becomes a big blow up between you two is, I think, really important.
It's really I like when you tell this story, Terry, because what a like respectable move on this person to say like to have that awareness and to be like boss or friend, I'd rather be friends, sort of thing. That's tricky, and it often doesn't work out that way. We've all seen it as coaches. Like I don't know, for someone listening to this podcast, when we say like we've seen it, I mean like we've fucking seen this so many times It's like one of the common things that happens. It's a little insane, is why it comes up as a topic on here. The other thing that was coming up for me, like, why is this a problem? Why can't you be friends with somebody and also have them under your employ or vice versa? And I wouldn't say that it's impossible or that I've never seen it, but other than this, like you being your true self, like there's always this like limitation in the relationship, like a little bit of arm's length separation that kind of inherently is there. Or if there isn't, and we see this go the other direction too, it influences other things. Like as humans, most people, all people, maybe controversial statement, all people are terrible at not letting their knowledge, opinion, view from this scenario with somebody or something spill into this one. It becomes part of your filter. It's just like how we work. And maybe you're a magician and can escape that. I know that like I can't, not entirely. And so the weird way that this plays out is owners end up being scared of the judgment of their team. They're like, oh, Shannon's my friend under my employee, but I also don't want Shannon to know how much I get paid because I don't want to feel, I think that Shannon would not like that or something. They don't even say that out loud, but like they want to be secretive of it. That's like your own shame, then projected onto this person that's your friend, that whatever. But then Shannon does learn how much they get paid and then is resentful that she thinks it's too much versus what she's getting paid. And because we're friends, it comes out over a glass of wine and the whole thing gets fucking weird. Or Terry, you and I had the conversation about you've had a couple clients that you've been able to help them navigate, the difficulty of like you've got a manager that's been under your employee for 10 years. They're part of a family that's like family friends even. So you're kind of their mentor, plus their mom, and their home life situation, their financial situation, whatever else. So then that person comes to the owner and is like, hey, like I need to get paid more, or I need to work in this way or whatever else because I'm trying to build my life. And the owner comes to us as the coach, comes to Terry and is like, yeah, well, I don't know what they're talking about. They have lots of money. And now we're talking about how something about their family, make an assumption on their financial situation when an employee of yours is asking for a raise. That's actually really fucked up. Like we shouldn't even be having that conversation. But that's because of this, like it's almost like a disempowering knowledge
Or the
sort of thing.
yeah, or the converse of that is you've come to that realization that you need to let this person go. And maybe you are aware of their financial, because I've had this happen where you are aware of the financial situation of the person, and losing the job would potentially put them. And I've had this a number of times. It's like it's usually it's like, and I would have, you are not responsible for their finances.
No.
Right. They feel guilty because they know that losing this job or whatever is going to put them in potentially could put them in dire straits. And I said, you are not responsible for that. You've done everything you can in this situation and it's still not working and it's not healthy. And, this person needs to go, and it's not your responsibility. Your finances are not their responsibility. And I actually had a client, it wasn't a friend, it was a staff, and the person said to the owner that, well, then I'm not going to be able to afford to pay my rent if you let me go, or you reduce, actually this was reducing shifts or something like that. And of course the owner was crushed. And I said, you know what? I said, that is emotional blackmail. And I would
Yeah, it
just
is.
let him, I said, that is apps, whether or not I realized, I said, that was it was a very unkind thing to say to you because that's emotional blackmail. And I said, and truthfully, if I would just say, you know what, you're gone, you're gone. It's like,
Okay,
that's,
it proves the point that there probably is a good time to split the
yeah,
relationship. Yeah.
yeah, because it's like,
Not that you
you're
can't do something to take care of your people,
right.
like that's your own prerogative. You can be empathetic and thoughtful for
Yes.
this, but responsibility and thoughtfulness and acting in your highest image are not the same exact thing in all cases.
Yeah. Before I jump to you, Shannon, I love how you always said this, Josh, and I use it a lot, is you can be empathetic to the person. and,
Yeah.
support the person and still hold up the standards and the boundaries of the business,
Yeah.
because it's the business that needs to survive and grow. To what you said, Bridget, or was it you, Shannon, is that if the business goes under, it impacts far more people. So
Yeah.
anyway, so Shannon,
Yeah, I mean, Terry, I've had that exact conversation with a staff member before, and again, it breaks your heart a little bit, but also, I can't have you teaching 8 classes with 3 people in them because then the business is going to go bankrupt and nobody has a job or a place to practice yoga.
Yeah.
Like I feel the pain, but I also have to make painful decisions on my end that you're not even aware of. And I'm trying not to make you aware of them. I'm just trying to base it on the reality of the numbers and the data and the KPIs and trying to make it non-emotional because once I tie my emotions up in it, that's when I get confused, you get confused. Nobody knows what's going on anymore. We're operating like, what are we doing? We're not operating a business anymore. We're operating, like I don't know, some sort of therapeutic experience of, that's like not helping anybody. So, yeah.
Well, where'd you get that emoji thing, Terry?
Yeah,
Nice.
up.
Up thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Terry's got like a secret stash of
well, I
weird
just, because
Zoom
unfortunately I don't have
emoji.
throw up. It's like I love that. I'm going to use that. You throw up, not down. I was trying to get like the
Yeah, it's so
throw
good.
up. It's so good instead of down. Yeah, I
I
mean,
was
I
also going to
mean,
say week 4 was not my breakdown. It was week 2. Just
was
throwing that
yours was
out
week
there.
C? Mine was actually week 8, which is usually way later. If you, those of you who don't have no idea what we're talking about, is
Sorry,
back
tangent.
tangent back in the old OG Bikram days. Bikram teacher training was 9 weeks. And it's very intense and very physical. You do 2 classes a day, and they're not 90 minutes. You're lucky if they're 90 minutes. Typically, they're like 2+ hours and all the things in between. And so there's usually a week where people just sort of like have a breakdown. And it usually is like week 4 because it's like halfway through. So, Josh, or I bet, did you break down? Did you have or breakthrough moment or
I had a tough moment where I felt tired, but I was way more prepared than anyone else in my training, minus one other pro. Like I'm not trying to brag, but I really was. I had my eating totally in control. I understood how to train. I understood rest protocols properly. It definitely wasn't easy. It was fucking super hard. But
Mhm.
I knew what to do. And I realized when I was there how many people like didn't know what to do in this
Yeah.
scenario. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of actual information to help you figure out how to do it. It was kind of like figure it out on your own. And that hence the
Yeah.
breakdown part. It was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
the like your emotions are a tuning fork. It's a signal that happens. But a signal isn't the controlling mechanism. When something happens, the signal is the information. So when emotions coming up in these staff conversations and stuff like this, and same thing like the emotional blackmail part, giving someone the benefit of the doubt in the story too, of like shit just comes out of people's mouths uncontrolled because they're stressed out. So let's say that it wasn't a deliberate, not this specific scenario, but any scenario, a deliberate emotional blackmail situation. Still, that's a boundary that I feel like you have to hold no matter what. But just Shannon, to your point, it's like, I don't know what even that business is, but we see it a lot where that's what's running the business. And that's the difference, going back to what you were saying, Terry. Like, you can be empathetic. You can be like, man, there's a lot of emotion that's coming up here on their side, on my side, whatever else. Someone has to be the adult, though, as well, for lack of a better way to say it. And someone has to lead towards the practical solution of things, and emotion is not the driving force that tends to be super powerful. On that note, it's Bridget, you said something else way earlier I think was really important. You're like where the owners sometimes start to kind of resent their staff. I'm not sure if you used the word resent or not, but we see that a lot. And man, that's a tricky one. It goes the other way around. We've gone somewhere where we always take the manager out for lunch or coffee, like personally, privately. Maybe if there's like a pinnacle teacher to try to just get a sense of like what's going on in this place if we're on the ground somewhere. And that can be really powerful, not necessarily because someone says something that we don't know and there's like a total curveball. It's how they say it. It's like the energy behind it that is often really fascinating and shows like a generalized perspective in the studio. And so in both directions, it's just the realization that like it's not your responsibility to manage the person's money, but it's not your responsibility to manage their emotional state either. But the bigger, more radical responsibility piece is it's not your staff's job to manage your emotional state. And it's completely unfair if your emotional state's out of whack if you put it on them. And so that's that's where owners like you don't even see it at first. It's tricky. The resenting your staff piece is such a great signal, actually. It sucks, but it doesn't mean that your staff isn't doing some fuckity shit. That's a technical word, fuckity, by the way. You can quote me on it. It doesn't mean that there's no truth or that like it's your fault and whatever. None of that. It's just a great signal though, because as soon as you start resenting your staff, that's the four horsemen. Like immediately, if there's resentment involved, there's obligation involved somewhere. You feel like there's a lack of choice that's going on. There's a shame piece associated here somewhere. Like this is all on your side. Immediately, this happens. And there's a judgment piece. And you can't have one of those without the other. So the second you start resenting your staff, all that's happening, even if they have objectively done something that's totally fuckety, is you're getting the signal about yourself, something's out of whack. And that's so friggin' valuable. That's how you grow as an owner. It's why you can meet an owner of a business that's 20 years in and they just seem like they're just made of steel. They're not cold negative, but they're just like nothing fucking phases them because they're like, I've been through 3 recessions and my best friend stole my car from the business. Like, I don't give a shit anymore. Perform or die, and I'll be really nice to you and pay you for the value that you create. And they're just, those businesses thrive because not because they're cold, because like there's a toughness, a grittiness that gets earned through that experience.
I have become, speaking of, practical tips, I have become a ninja at recognizing resentment in myself with my staff. Like if it even comes up, and I used to have it all the time for everyone, like it was just rampant. And now, I'm especially careful. I really don't have that much interaction, or like I don't have that much to get resentful about with my teaching staff anymore, just being fully remote. But for me right now, it's focused mostly on my management team. So my manager and my lead teacher. And if I notice, and this has come up a few times since I've been away the last year and a half, I'll notice a little bit creeping up. And I'm like, no, like we have to squash that, especially because for me, it is very much tied to survival because I don't like if I have to, um, if my manager quits or if I have to fire her, that is a very expensive plane ride for me. And it's a very expensive several months probably in San Diego away from my home. And I would have loved to have gotten that good at it when I was in San Diego. I'm much better at it now. But yeah, so I think that's that is actually very practical to just notice when resentment comes up immediately and do your journal, talk to your therapist, talk to your coach, figure out what's going on, and then take it to the staff member that you are feeling that resentment for. The other thing I was going to say, based on something Josh was saying, was, Josh, you were talking about emotions being a tuning fork, not like the thing you act on. And that is another tip for building trust with your team is you don't let their emotions decide. You don't let their crazy reactions decide. And I mean crazy in a loving way. I have crazy reactions all the time to all sorts of stuff. You don't let their crazy reactions make changes in your business, and you don't let your crazy reactions make changes in your business. And even if they get even crazier and even more emotional and even madder about that, again, it reminds me of parenting, which is like you still are building trust with them because you're saying to them, like, I'm actually in charge here. You don't need to, like, that's actually not how we run this business. And it isn't actually comforting and helpful in the long term to someone to indicate to them that they can freak the fuck out and then changes will be made. And all they have to do is like go crazy about it. Terry.
Yes, I 100% agree. I one time did have a freak out with, I was like, teacher said something to me and I just went off on her and was not good. I was not in a good space. And then afterwards I did apologize to her, but unfortunately with her, the damage was done. It was really done. And to the point that, and I'm not proud of this. This is not, at least with the other moment I shared, my friend recognized it. We're still besties and all of that. It's just in this case, it was fractured beyond repair. And the ultimate was when I was in California after my mom died for her funeral, she quit when I was in California. And when I asked her, can you stay till I get back? She said no. And so I realized that was a big fuck you to me, right? It was like, to me, that was like, wow, that was a real leadership moment. And at that point, it was like, I couldn't do anything. But I said, okay, fine. But yeah, sometimes there's no coming back from that stuff, but we're all human. We're all human. So anyway, I do have to bounce because as I mentioned, I'm on site. So if I can leave one more practical tip that's on topic, not on topic, whatever, is that because we're here working with the front desk and training the team and all that stuff, is invest in time and energy to do this. It is worth it. We've already seen changes with the team just from day one to yesterday, Monday to Wednesday, and we're talking about maybe half hour here, half hour there. So if you're struggling with, well, how, other than, bringing someone in, bringing our team in, where can I start? You don't have to start big. You can start small, right? If you just take, and Shannon knows this, if you just take half hour a day or 10 minutes a day and you work with the team and you keep reinforcing it, you keep doing it over, even just that little bit, if you don't know where to start, just start little. Just start with the basic thing. It's like, hey, Josh, what most people do is our intro special. And for you, it's only $40 for 2 weeks of unlimited yoga. Just start with a basic thing. And you'll be amazed at how much traction you can get just that repetition over and over again. I got to bounce because, again, got to get back. And thank you so much, Bridget. I made you host so that this thing doesn't. I did that once before, did make someone host, and when I left the meeting, the whole thing went bye-bye. So we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
One thing the parenting thing triggered for me is that there's a parenting coach I was talking with quite some time ago, maybe 10 years ago or something. We're talking about the idea of a tantrum and what's happening in that scenario. And it's funny because, like, as adults, so many of us have tantrums still in our own way. But the technique that she was talking through, which I found really useful, is you can't disrupt the tantrum. Like, that will actually, you have to make sure that there's safety. It shouldn't actually cause harm to somebody else. It shouldn't break anything, whatever. But then beyond that, it's like just your emotion. So, okay, cool. But it's also like not separating from that because that teaches a reaction too. It's like this tantrum is happening, interesting, totally non-emotionally reactive to it. When it's kind of over or calmed down, it's just the simple statement like, oh, is that over now? Like, that happened and now it's over. Cool. We're not even fucking talking about it. Doesn't, because it doesn't matter. Solution to the like actual thing that's happening. And I feel like, man, is that ever useful? To your point, Bridget, with staff, where like they're having an emotional reaction to something, they're allowed to have that. That's the empathetic piece. If it's not causing harm to anybody else and it's not disrupting the business actively in real time, like you can have whatever emotion you want. The tricky part is I'm gonna not take that on, wait a second, and be like, cool. So now like what is the actual problem here that we're dealing with? And let's brainstorm on how we can actually solve the problem. Sometimes there is no real problem and there's nothing to solve. It's just I don't like this or it's uncomfortable. Other times you actually get something really valuable. The problem has nothing to do with what the reaction is, but you have to like get through that reactive piece. But if you react to their reaction, like the whole thing spirals, and that's what we see all the time in the service business. And I feel like there's an additional tension in the service business because there's the business, there's the dynamic with the staff, but then you're also dealing with all of the energetic shenanigans of your clients coming in too, who are putting stuff on people. And like it's a lot. And it's a lot of pressure on you. So
That actually brings us back to something Shannon had mentioned. Shannon, do you want to bring that back up? Because I think that could be an interesting thing to pivot to.
Yeah, well, I was talking about actually exactly that, the resistance that you experience from your clients when you're trying to when you make a decision that's based on, actual factual data and not emotional attachment. Been having this go on at my studio because summer and people are traveling and all the things. And, we've had to make some adjustments in the schedule and whatnot. And as the leader, like I have to stand behind those decisions and also support my staff and not throw them under the bus and be like, well, they're leaving for all of the summer. And so blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, our people need to take a break. You're going to be fine. This class is at this time now. It's summertime. Be flexible. Be non-attached to, the whatever it is. We've had a lot of that lately where, this is my spot in the room and this is my class and don't touch the thing. And, it's just, you're just kind of watching people like cycle through their their attachment and their emotions. And as the owner, you kind of have to be the constant. You have to be the pillar in the storm of like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. I've got you. You know, um,
I
and I
think
think that you get it from both. And basically, what I'm saying is you get it from both sides as the owner. And so playing that sort of that role, it can be a challenge, but it's also, like you said, it's such a place of growth. Like you have to stand in your belief about your business and make the decisions that nobody else is willing to make or can make. So,
total. And I would add, and I don't want this to sound like a correction, but it's like you don't have to stand in anything. But to what end? You want to have someone come at your staff or a client come up and be like, but I want the 1 p.m. class on Tuesday. And you're like, okay, sorry, I'll keep it on there and lose money. Like, you can do that too. It's all a choice. From a business coach, business oriented standpoint, seems stupid sometimes to do that. But like, no, again, no judgment. You can do whatever you want. The right or wrong piece, I think, is part of the detachment that you're alluding to, Shannon, that you get to, where you're like, I use the analogy as a Canadian. I'm like, it's like friggin' refereeing a hockey game. You can know the rule book and do a perfect job refereeing the hockey game objectively. Someone in the stands calls you an asshole. Some player complain. Like you cannot make everyone in the building happy. It's not possible. Period. Ever. Ever. I'm talking. I used to ref beer league at 11 o'clock at night, and it's like none of these. We're not even keeping score of the game, and some guy yells at you.
come
It's
on,
just
ref.
yeah, come on, yeah, exactly. What are you doing, Stripes? Freaking blind. I'm like, you're like 80. I'm 15. Why are you yelling at me right now? It's just, it's almost part of the game. You're the point just being like right, wrong, good, bad. That's the stuff in business that you get. It's a good testing ground to get to see how you're using that framework and strategy to make your decisions when you don't need to be. And not that it has no place at all, but you can do whatever you want. If you just want a class at noon, 5 days a week, and no one's coming to you, but you're like, I don't care. I want that class. Great, you can do that. It's your business. If a coach is a coach, we're not going to tell you it's right or wrong, but like objectively, what are we trying to accomplish with that? And I think that's how you start to escape some of this tension is where you're like, the reason I'm going to keep this and make a decision that maybe isn't in the business best interest, or the reason I am going to do it because it is in the business best interest, even if it loses that client and I have to go through the pain of that. Like there's a sacrifice, a trade that's being made. As soon as you actually accept that and kind of take ownership over the truth of why you're doing it, then it gets much easier. It's less cloudy. Um, I would just throw into the mix as well, off the back of what you're saying, Shannon, too, is that especially when you're a little tired, a little stressed, a little burnt out as an owner, because it's like turns the dial up, you forget that you can change your mind. Like you can do something and then be like, nope, that didn't do what I thought I was going to do. I'm going to do something else. Like you're not stuck forever. I'm saying like there are some big decisions that have lasting impact, of course, but sometimes we get so much tension, especially around like letting a staff go or giving a raise or not, or a class schedule or changing this, or a client complains because they didn't get their spot anymore. And you're like, I'd rather just be like, hey, we don't do that. And I might risk losing them. Like there'll be some repercussion of that, but it doesn't mean next week you can't do something different. Add the class back in if you want to. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I think that building trust with your staff is pretty much the same, besides the like nitty-gritty details. It's all the same stuff as building trust with your community and creating that relationship with your community that is similar to the one you have with your staff. In my experience, when I transformed my relationship with my staff, it exactly mirrored the relationship I had with my community. Like it was the exact, I was dealing with so many less complaints, so many fewer complaints. I was getting way less negativity from clients. I was getting way less pushback when I would try and enforce or when I would enforce policies. And I do think it all, like a lot of it just comes back to um I think it comes back to a couple things and they're both related, but your community has to trust you as well. And there's lots of things you can do that make them trust you, like stick to your policies and enforce them across the board and be clear about them, communicate well, show up for them, all the same things I was saying before about um, building trust with your staff. The other thing that I was thinking about that was so crucial for me in helping me deal with pushback from my staff, pushback from clients, negative feedback, tantrums, all that stuff. One of the biggest things for me was building my sense of worth of my business. I felt when I started just making changes, like when I got a coach basically and started like really being like, Bridget, this is when I came back from COVID and living abroad. And I was like, you can either close this business down or you can make it a really good business. And once I did that and I started to grow, my own self-worth, but my sense of like, oh, actually, I forgot why I even started this. And I started it because I genuinely think yoga makes your life 100 times better. And that is what I am providing consistently and well. And I'm doing it even more consistently and even better than I was before because now I'm like really digging into my business and showing up for it. And now suddenly when someone pushes back about a late fee, I'm like, I'm worthy of I'm worthy of people showing and my business is worth you showing up. And you not showing up means that I didn't get to provide this to someone else. And that matters because this is a good business and this provides something good to the community. And I think I was missing a lot of that for a couple years there in the beginning of like, oh, is this even a good yoga studio? Like, and then suddenly when someone asks for their money back, you're like, yeah, you probably should have your money back. Like this probably wasn't worth it or whatever. And the same goes for my staff. Like I felt the same way of before. I was like, oh God, yeah, they're probably right. Like this is probably bad. I am probably doing something bad. And when I grew my worth and myself and my business, I started to be like, yeah, I get that you don't like that. But this is actually for now, this is the right decision for now. And I trust myself. So that's all I got on that.
I also think that, the sort of 3% rule that's been kicked around on a couple of roundups is really important. And in the community, if 3% of the people are complaining, like it's probably going to be okay. We tend to hear the 3% louder than the 97%. So I'm always trying to remind myself, like sometimes I'll just go and check reviews, or I'll just go into the studio and just have a little bit of a, oh my God, thank you so much for having the studio. I'm so grateful for this place. And it's like, yes, okay, this is why. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Um, Instead of, making the tantrum the focal point of your entire consciousness of like, this is happening. This one person hates the fact that there's no 1 p.m. class on Sunday. Like, okay, cool. They're gonna survive. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, they'll be okay. You'll be okay. Everything will be okay. That's
It's
one
gonna be
PM class.
okay.
I mean, all of this, but with what you're saying, Shannon, and going back to yours, Bridget, too, what was coming up for me is like, whatever you focus on expands. We talk about this all the time. Wherever the energy goes, everything else is flowing that direction. And so there's also the concept of like, one, be specific about your focus. What are you focusing on? I'm focusing on the one dude who's pissed off of the 1 p.m. class. Like, man, focus on something else. You actually are able to control your thoughts, you know. But when something is stealing your focus, I think that's a huge signal too, that's tricky. You find yourself fixating, hyper focusing on something, but did you deliberately decide to focus on it? Like our mind just jumps into all sorts of things. But when it's like a staff member, a client, or whatever else coming in, and they've pulled your focus over to this thing, and then now your focus there, it continues to grow right away. And so, just to me, what was really helpful, and even to this day, is just asking the simple question: wait, well, one, is there a real problem here that I should have my focus pulled over here? Like someone's flagging that for me, that's positive. But on the negative side is, did I decide to focus on this, or did my focus get hijacked over here, and then I'm allowing that to continue? That's the me part of it. Because you can just choose to not focus on it. I mean, put your head in the sand, but it's like the whatever analogy you want, feed the beast or fan the flame sort of thing. Just don't feed it. Sometimes the best action you can take is really like no action at all. It's legitimately to just, oh, thanks for your feedback, or that's interesting. Like, huh, I guess we'll see how it plays out, and just move on to the next thing. The question that can be helpful from the staff management piece, I was working on this with a client recently where we're all doomed to continue to have a repeat scenario until we figure out what we're supposed to get from it, what the experience is offering us, because you realize that you're a participant in the creation of it. And so when you have the scenario where it seems like I've had bad luck with staff members. Like this person was a butthead. That person stole $10 from the till. This person showed up late. These teachers don't think that they can whatever and do whatever they want in class. The question isn't like, how do I fix 20 people? Because what's more likely, 20 people suck, or like systemically, you, the one controlling the system, don't have something in place? How is it possible that I'm having this experience repeatedly in the current paradigm of how we're operating? Why is it my team thinks it's appropriate when I say, hey, you guys, we're going to have a promotion this month? And they're like, I don't like sales. Like the fact that you would think, and we see this all the time training at yoga studios and sales, the fact that a studio owner could pay money to have a professional sales training team show up physically on the ground for a week and train them. And in that training in front of the owner, they're so comfortable that they'd be like, I just don't think sales, or like, I just don't like selling. And it's so nonchalant. They're not doing it as pushback. They're just statement of fact. Like, this is just my reality. Like, they're so disconnected and oblivious. They don't even see that there's any issue with that whatsoever. It's almost like a naivety. So it's not even upsetting. Wow, that's really fascinating. We see that all the time. How is it possible that in my business, I have someone who is the first point of contact, face of the business in the primary sales position, who's comfortable enough to look a professional sales trainer in the eye in front of me on paid time while I've paid this person and say, I don't believe in sales? That's not a them problem. Like, something in a bigger system of things has taken place. And so it's all fixable, but the question that can be helpful sometimes, other than the system question, like how is it possible that I have a system that allows this to be true, is if you feel like your focus being hijacked, what am I reinforcing, empowering, or enabling? If you're reinforcing, empowering, or enabling something that you want, great. If you're reinforcing, empowering, or enabling something that you don't want, you don't actually like it, and the flag, the signal will be emotion comes up. I don't fucking like it that Shannon's giving me shit right now, right? Then why are you doing it? And that's where the like obligation comes in, or the shame, or the like taking the ego responsibility over somebody else's state, whatever else, being a nice person, all these other things. You realize right away that's what's happening in the mix. What a fun testing ground business is. Quote unquote fun.
You're bringing it all the way back to basically how we started the conversation, which was trust and leadership.
Yeah.
Trust and leadership.
How do you build it? Yeah.
I would throw into the mix with that the trust and leadership piece. If when we look at, and I don't just mean like opinion or experience, although that too, I'm sure you guys can corroborate this, even in the hard data, if I go and look at the businesses we've coached for over the last 10 years, over 1,000 businesses we've been behind the scenes on, with like real depth with some businesses, 5, 6, 7 years of data, the ones that have grown 4 or 5 times in the last 2 or 3 years, the ones that have like are powerhouse businesses, talking like what seems like a little yoga studio that you wouldn't, is totally unassuming, one single location with one single yoga room doing, mid to high uh, first 7 figures. What are the characteristics of those businesses? And one is trust and leadership.
Mhm.
There are none of those businesses. There's no like, I'll use Pilates studio or yoga studio. There's no Pilates studio or yoga studio that I've seen that's doing 2 million a year in gross sales in a single small location where the staff's like clearly doesn't trust the leadership and is complaining about them all the time. I haven't seen it.
No.
At the 500,000 to 750 a year range, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Take that for what it is. You do need them to trust you. And
Yeah.
you also need to trust them.
Mm.
Yep.
Well, seems like we
Well,
solved it all.
Fixed everything. Congratulations,
fixed it.
guys.
Awesome. Is that a wrap?
Let's wrap it up.
The wrap.
Well, that's a wrap on this week's Weekly Roundup. Tune in every Friday and make sure you subscribe to the show on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.